I think everybody underestimates the success and the value of Bitcoin, and they overestimate everything else.
November was a very interesting time. I mean, in eToro, we had a lot of customers coming in to get their account open, buy Bitcoin as soon as they could.
I mean, Bitcoin is 10 years old, successful proof of work system. It's not clear to me, like, you've only got two things in the blockchain that have been deemed as property or commodity, Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's only two. But there's only one of them that has a consistent strategy for the next decade and a consistent path for the last decade, and that's Bitcoin. If we look at the last decade, Bitcoin's up about 120% a year on average for 10 years. It's up about 250% for the past 12 months. Over any last 4-year time frame, I don't think anybody's ever lost money holding it for 4 years. So a pretty simple rule of thumb would be, if I could borrow money for less than the expected return, and if it comes due more than 4 years out, then I think I'm pretty safe. So if you're going to loan me money at 6% interest for 6 days, and I bought Bitcoin, might be some risk. 6 months, maybe some risk. 6 years. Well, I took a survey on Twitter of all my followers, and I said, over the course of 7 years, do you think Bitcoin will go up on average 6 and 8% interest or more? It turns out that was our last secure debt financing. We borrowed money at 6 and 8% interest. So it's like 90% of them said yes. Okay, so if you're long Bitcoin, you think it's going to go up more than 6% a year, then would you borrow money at 6%? Sure. Would you borrow money at 2%? I mean, the truth of the matter is, if you went to anybody in any business in the world and you asked them, would you borrow $1 billion at 0% interest to invest in the business you're in? If the answer is no, then they must not believe in they probably should get out of the business, right? If you're not willing to invest $1 billion at 0% interest in the business that you're currently in, you're short, right? You're short the business. Right. So in that case, the right answer is you ought to borrow the $1 billion and short the thing. Right. But if you don't have an opinion one way or the other, you probably shouldn't be in that business. And there's 10,000 businesses, Dana. I don't have an opinion on biomechanical engineering or nuclear engineering. I don't really know. I don't purport to be an expert in the 99.9% of the things in the world that I'm not an expert in. I just feel like you should focus upon the thing that you're going to work on. If you know that thing and someone is willing to give you favorable financing, and if you have a use of the proceeds, look, there's a lot of, if I'm running a diner down the street and it's a nice diner and I got 6 employees and I'm really good at it and I love it, and you offered me $1 billion, maybe I don't need $1 billion of capital to upgrade my diner. It's not capital intensive. So there are some businesses where you can't use the capital, but Bitcoin is a business where you can use the capital. It's either going up or it's going down. If it works, it's going up. And if it's going up, then you would like to own as much of it as you can possibly own. So my view of the capital markets is if you can acquire capital at a reasonable cost of funds under the right conditions without onerous covenants, then yeah, you should go ahead and acquire that capital. There's a couple of issues with it. First of all, as a publicly traded company, it takes the typical publicly traded company 3 to 6 months to get through the compliance and the regulatory and the accounting and the due diligence issues to just simply trust the counterparties to acquire and custody Bitcoin. Okay, so that's a big deal. And what do you get for that? Well, the last decade, you got 120% annualized return. In the last year, you got 250% annualized return. So I would say you get a pretty good return by going through the motions of acquiring and holding the Bitcoin. The offers with regard to yield are 4%, 5%, 8%. Okay, so you're talking about an order of magnitude less, and you're at least going to double the amount of effort, but you've got counterparty risk. So, you know, what if you loan out $1 billion of the Bitcoin and somebody loses it all, right? So I think the counterparty risk is large. There's already complexity, right? There's DeFi complexity. Am I going to do a DeFi? Well, that's got a regulatory overhang, right? Maybe it's illegal. Maybe it's a security problem. So no, not going to do that. There's a security problem. So what if I put it on a DeFi blockchain and there's a rug pull and you lose it all? Okay. So there's security issue. There's a regulatory issue. There's an audit, and there's a legal and accounting issue. Okay. So, well, what if I do CeFi? Well, you know, what if I put it with, you know, one of the yield generating CeFi players, BlockFi, et cetera? Well, there's regulatory overhang there too. There's a question of compliance. I think the Bitcoin decision increased our brand awareness by a factor of 100. Okay, so that helps us enormously with recruiting. It helps us enormously with retention. It helps us enormously. If we go to a CFO or a CEO and we're showing MicroStrategy software, now they know who we are, right? I mean, I think I've got 20, 25 million YouTube views. So people have heard of us now. So it's always useful if people know who you are. And of course, Bitcoin is one of the most, if not the most disruptive technology of the decade. And it's disrupting the energy industry. It's disrupting the investment community. It's disrupting the technology community. That means it's disrupting politics and economics in general. It's disrupting the definition of assets and property rights. So that being the case, it gets people's attention, and it's progressive, and it gets people focused. So I think it's been great for morale. It's been great for retention. It's been great for acquisition of new employees, and it's helping us to deliver our corporate message. MicroStrategy software business was up 10% in the first quarter, year over year. Our business is up 13% in the second quarter. So when you get to double-digit growth, that's a good thing, and we've been seeing strengthening of that business subsequent to our decision to embrace Bitcoin. I think everybody underestimates the success and the value of Bitcoin, and they overestimate everything else. I mean, Bitcoin is 10 years old, successful proof of work system. It's not clear to me, like, you've only got two things in the blockchain that have been deemed as property or commodity, Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's only two, but there's only one of them that has a consistent strategy for the next decade and a consistent path for the last decade, and that's Bitcoin, right? So I think it's pretty important to understand that Bitcoin is pretty much the most predictable thing in the entire blockchain universe. Everything else is uncertain. There's massive technical uncertainty, security uncertainty, legal uncertainty, execution uncertainty. And so I think people overestimate, right, the certainty or the value of everything else. I think they underestimate the value of Bitcoin. People ask me if are you going to diversify? And my point is, the most diversified strategy you could take is own all the Bitcoin. Every single time you buy something other than Bitcoin in the blockchain system, you're actually assuming a whole basket of new risks that you didn't even know you assumed, and you're losing diversification against the traditional conventional economy. You've got $500 trillion worth of assets in the world. Every bank, every big tech company, every government on earth, every one of them would solve their problems by buying Bitcoin. If Apple, Google, and Facebook build Bitcoin into their application, they improve their business. if El Salvador or Cuba or Turkey or Japan or Russia or the US or the UK or France buy Bitcoin, they fix their balance sheet. Every company on earth, if they buy Bitcoin, they fix their balance sheet. So Bitcoin is the solution to hundreds of thousands of entities. And if you don't own it, you're not exposed to each of those entities, right? Everything else in the world is not. You're not going to buy a random mobile app in order to fix your balance sheet of your turkey. And you're not going to buy another crypto, right? That there isn't a proof of work digital property which is stable that you can use to fix your city, fix your state, fix your country, fix your business, fix your technology. So I think people underestimate Bitcoin. And I get that, by the way, and I agree with that, but that's a strategy that anybody with capital can pursue. So if you want to make $10 billion, you just buy $10 billion of Bitcoin and wait for it to double, right? It's a very simple strategy. And as large institutions get comfortable with Bitcoin as an asset class, then they're going to pursue that strategy, right? But my idea or my thought with Apple is, we will get to a point in this world where 8 billion people will have a mobile phone. There's guys, I guess 6 billion now, 5 to 6 billion. And those mobile phones will be controlled probably by either the iOS or the Android operating system. So you're staring at who are the big mobile players? It's Google and Apple, split the world between them. And then Facebook is that compelling app on top of them. So those are the big three. We will get to the world where everybody wants to carry their property on their phone. And so if I give you $1 million and I say to you, invest it in something that you can give to your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren in 100 years. You know, a building, land, gold, silver, a stock, you know, a bond. You know, what is that something? Well, I don't want to take any of that risk. I just want the pure money. And the answer is, okay, put $1 million of Bitcoin on the thing. And how are you going to handle that? A mobile device. And how are you going to secure it? You know, it's going to be some combination of Face ID, multi-signature Face ID, or biometrics across multiple mobile devices with multi-factor authentication. And that's how you're going to move it. And that's how you're going to custody it. And that means that the iCloud, what's in the iCloud now, right? Your videos, your photos, your documents, and your communications. What's not in the iCloud now? Your money. What happens when $100 trillion gets slurped out of 20th century property, which is land, real estate, gold, bonds, securities? What happens when $100 trillion gets slurped into digital property? It's got to land in the iCloud or the equivalent of the Android cloud or in Facebook. And if none of those three step up, Dan, then it's going to be Square and PayPal. And then one day Square will be $1 trillion company, right? So. And it's going to be a little war between them. And maybe, you know, there'll be maneuvering between the exchanges and the apps, et cetera. But that's the opportunity now.